So thanks for joining in, and I've put a link to the handout in the chat. And for those of you who are watching this video after the fact, there is a link to this handout somewhere really close to where you got this video. And so we will share some quick and easy SEO steps that you can do on any post, any page, and that will help you to make sure that everything you do is optimized to the best of your ability within the time frame allowable. And so I want to start by just explaining how SEO has the ability to impact the outcomes of everything you publish, whether it's an article for source, an article for any of our sites, a page on any of our sites, any client sites, even social media. All of these different things work together. And search engine optimization is how we tell Google or Bing or whatever the search engine is what this article's about, and what we want people who are searching, what they're searching, that we want them to be able to find this. And it starts a process that then helps Ron and other people on our team be able to monitor how your page, article, whatever is ranking over time. And then we can make further improvements to it so that it gets the most eyeballs. Okay. And if you just think in terms of sources, about a third of every visitor we get today will come from organic search. 1/3 of everybody who comes in today will come from organic search. And some aspects of our content, like obituaries and breaking news articles, it'll be even higher as a percentage of the traffic that's driven by that content. So search engine optimization has a huge impact on how many eyeballs ultimately will see this. And the way to know how much time you should spend and allocate to search engine optimization for any page or article is really driven by the question of how perishable versus how evergreen is this content. Okay. The more evergreen the content, the more time you want to invest in SEO. For example, an article about some event that's happening tomorrow is pretty perishable, right? So you'd want to spend a little bit of time, optimize around probably the name of the event, and move on. But if this is the 10 best places for fish tacos, and you know people are going to be searching fish tacos every day for the rest of our lives, then you want to take extra time to make sure that this article or page is really well SEO'd. Because if you just take a look at the top 100 articles on Williamson Source last week, 12 years later, 12 years we've been doing Williamson Source. About 8 years ago, we wrote a piece that was the top 150 songs of yacht rock. To this day, 8 years later, that article is almost always in the top 100 articles every week. Why? Because it has awesome search engine optimization around the phrase yacht rock. And so that's an example, an extreme example of how one piece of content that you write 8 years ago, even today, is still making money for us as an article people read on Williamson Source. The same can be true for our clients. The same can be true for our other sites. And so SEO is important enough that we made it the very first training topic that we're covering in this whole series. So I want to take some time to run you through what this looks like, how this generally works, and then I've created for you a checklist of things that, initially what I would encourage you to do is have this with you whenever you're creating content, whenever you're publishing content, and just get yourself in the habit of addressing these things in normal course. All right. So I've opened this is a page, not an article, but a page and a post are very similar. I'm sorry, this is a post. A page and a post are very similar in terms of these elements and these steps. The difference is primarily that a page is just a static page location in your site, and an article, even though the two things kind of work similarly, articles are designed to just to flow differently in the WordPress environment. But for all intent and purposes, I'm going to use post and page interchangeably in everything I'm going to show you today. We're going to have Q&A in about 8 minutes. So if you have questions along the way here, drop them in the chat, and then we'll make sure that we've answered all of those before we wrap up today. So I've created a post called The 5 Most Common SEO Mistakes and How to Avoid Them in Your Search Engine Optimization Strategy. All right. So how do we SEO this article? Well, the very first thing that we're going to do is, before we even publish the article, we're going to think about what is the focus keyword. Now, the focus keyword is the foundation of everything you do in SEO. Every article, every page, every post has what is called a focus keyword or a focus phrase, keyword phrase. It can be one word, it can be 10 words. But you want it to be driven by what people will type into the search engine, that you know this article, this page, this post is an excellent result for that search. So for example, the focus keyword that I have for this article is search engine optimization. Okay. Because I'm trying to, if somebody's searching about search engine optimization, I want them to find this article, 5 Mistakes to Avoid with Search Engine Optimization. And so sometimes, this is a great example, search engine optimization is also very well known commonly as SEO. So in this case, I'm also going to come down here, and where it says related key phrase, I'm going to put SEO in here. I have put SEO in here. So my keyword, my key phrase is search engine optimization. My related key phrase is SEO. And this is the related is for any time there's like a common second way or third way, you can add multiple related key phrases. But anytime something is known 2 ways, like search engine optimization and SEO, they're the same thing. You just tell Yoast that they're the same. What is Yoast? So in all of our sites in which we publish, we use a plugin in WordPress called Yoast SEO Premium. This is where you do the bulk of your search engine optimization in any page, post, article. You start by sharing the key phrase. In this case is search engine optimization. So why did I choose that? Well, I'm choosing that because that is the most searched thing related to the topic that I'm writing about. You want to think about, if you're writing an article, for example, some easy examples, obituary, the person's name, right? That's what people are going to type in. Now, you might also use in a case of an obituary, you might also use a related key phrase, which might be person's name, obituary. Okay. And that can become tricky though, and I'll explain in a second. You start with this focus keyword. In most cases, you research it. There are all sorts of tools that you can use to figure out what people are searching. Google Trends is the easiest one. Google AdWords has what's called a keyword planner. And so you can type in a bunch of things and it will show you what people are actually typing into this Google search engine and how frequently. And so I tend to focus on the things that are most frequently searched. Other times, what you're looking for is people who are searching something very, very specific. Sometimes we refer to that as a long tail search. Like, for example, when we're doing real estate content, we've started to do a lot of optimization around homes for sale in, and then either the name of a community or the name of a neighborhood. So homes for sale in Franklin, homes for sale in West Haven, homes for sale in neighborhood name. And it's perfectly fine to have a longer focus keyword or key phrase like that. Just make sure that you're not being so specific that you kind of limit yourself, unless that's your goal. Make sense? Also, don't reuse the same focus key phrase over and over and over again in the same website. It's confusing to Google. Google really doesn't want a whole bunch of stuff in your website that's optimized around search engine optimization. So what you would do is you would have, say, one article about search engine optimization, another one that might be around common mistakes in search engine optimization. So once you've used something generically, you want to start being more specific out into the future. And with some things, this can be really difficult. So maybe throw me some examples of questions or challenges you see with that, and we'll talk about that in the Q&A. Synonyms, search engine optimization, SEM, just use the related keywords. Now, whatever your focus keyword or key phrase is, you're going to want to use in the following places. You're going to use it in the title. So you can notice that in the title of this article, I have used search engine optimization. Because I set up that SEO is another way that it's known, I put that in parentheses here, okay? And I've used both. You don't have to, but it's just going to help you in most cases later. You also want it in the slug. What's the slug? Well, everything has the slug is essentially the permalink or the URL of the page. So the slug here is 5 mistakes to avoid search engine optimization SEO. And you'll notice that this page then became called, if I come back up here, the permalink, the URL of this page is 5 mistakes to avoid search engine optimization SEO. And then you also want to use it here in the meta description. And you'll notice there's a green bar underneath this meta description. If I keep typing more stuff, you notice how that turned orange. If I keep typing, it'll eventually turn red. But really what you want, the point here is to make sure you're in the green zone. Whatever you type in here is what's going to put you in, you want to make it in the green zone. What is this? What's the meta description? How does Google use it? When you do a Google search and you type in anything, the meta description is this. It'll show up right here, okay? And so the meta description is what ends up right in this space when you when Google shows this article. So the meta description is really, really, really important. Where else? Tag. So in the article setup or page setup or post setup, there is this section called tags. You want your focus key phrase always to be tagged in this space here, wherever you can, whenever you can. There are some scenarios where, like in the multi-tool, where we're limited on how many tags we can use. It's not ideal, but it's a fair trade-off to leave it out. The next place that you want to think about your SEO is in your featured image. Every post, every page, everything should have a featured image, okay? Even if it's not an article in a website, you still want to have a featured image. Why? Because anytime you link this page in social media, anywhere, that featured image is going to get pulled up. And what you can do is when you're loading a featured image, it allows the first thing you want to do is work backward. So before you ever upload this featured image, change the name of the image to your key phrase. And you want to do that without spaces. So the way you would name the photo is you would name it. So where's a real example? So you would take this article, and if I was calling this search engine optimization, the way I would write the name is search engine optimization. Once you've renamed it, then upload it to the media library. And for this purposes, I'm going to assume you know how to do that. If you don't, we'll get some side help on helping you do that. And then when you're uploading it to the media library, it'll ask you for a title, it'll ask you for an alt tag, and it'll ask you for a description, okay? In all three of those, in the title, you're going to use search engine optimization. You don't have to put the dashes, but it's okay if you do. In the alt tag, you're going to use the dashes, search engine optimization. In the description, you're going to use search engine optimization. You can use the spaces in the description and the title. Use dashes in the alt tag, okay? And that's key because if you don't use the dashes in the alt tag, then Google tries to put them in there, and sometimes it doesn't put them in there the way you want, okay? So, for example, City Hall in the alt tag becomes city-hall. And if you're putting a picture of City Hall as your featured image, it should be named city-hall or Franklin City Hall, or whatever your key phrase is, you want to use that. So you want to make sure that if you have related key phrases, if you have synonyms in there, put an extra image somewhere in the page that uses that synonym, the related key phrase. Instead of search engine optimization, use SEO, for example, and treat it just like a featured image with how you document it. And then in the body of your article, you should always have your key phrase in an H2, meaning this format that I'm following here this is called an H2. It's a heading 2. I'm sorry, heading 3. Sorry, heading 3. And what I tend to do to get a good readability score on all of these things, and readability we'll talk about in just a second, is I like to summarize each section of what I'm writing with an H3 ahead of time. So the 5 most common SEO mistakes and how to avoid them in your search engine optimization strategy. You'll notice I'm switching back and forth between SEO and search engine optimization. Why? Because I need to score well on both. How do you score well? Well, down here, you'll notice right now I've got green lights. I've got happy faces here for SEO and readability. Once you've written what you're going to do and you're kind of ready to publish, you come back down here and you look and see if you have a red sad face or a yellow or orange sad face. You have work to do. And you'll notice here there are things in red under the analysis that it's telling me I really need to fix or should fix. In this case, I don't want to fix those things because I think I'm happy with it the way I have it, and I'd rather not change that if I can avoid it. I got a couple things that are in orange here. These are like, if you can improve them, great. And then these are all the things that are contributing to my success here. These are all things that are working in my favor. The same thing is available to you so that you can figure out the readability. And so here you can see I'm all green. If I had reds or yellows or oranges, it would tell me what's wrong. Like the most common thing is, hey, you've used the key phrase too many times or not enough. Or your sentences are too long or whatever. And you see this flesh reading ease. You're looking for a score. I believe that the ideal is above a 60. And so these are really important. Now, prioritize this tab, the SEO tab, over the readability tab. I publish lots of things that have a green for SEO and even a red for readability. Why? Because sometimes the readability is based on stuff that doesn't have anything to do with how you've organized your article. And, readability is where you can make a lot of compromises. What you're really looking for is green is good to go on SEO. And in every article, there's a couple of other key things. In every article, especially for those of you who are writing articles that are going to appear in Source or a client website, you always want to have at least one internal link to another part of the website. Okay? Always at least one. And you always want to have at least one link to a category landing page. So let's say you're writing an article in the category, you're writing an obituary, and the category is obituaries, the primary category. At the end of or somewhere in that article, it's really ideal to have a final sentence, for example, that says, see other recently posted obituaries here, and backlink that to the obituaries section page or category landing page. Okay. This has become more and more important because what Google is wanting you to do is link more and more of your site together so that it's easy for people to get from where they ended up from an organic search back to more like this, more content like this. So you could also link back to a recent article that maybe you're following up on. You could also link back to other crime, see other crime stories that we're following we're following right now. And that just takes you back to a category landing page. Every article, more and more and more, should have a link back, especially for those of you on the Source team, should have a link back to a category landing page. Okay. And ideally, you want to have at least one external link to some sort of related content. Let's just go with that obituary example. You might have a link back to the funeral home where the funeral is happening. If it's an article about something, you might have a link back to that thing's website. If it's a article about, something, a certain school, you might have a link back to that school website or that school's, social media. Or having an external link is in most cases is required before Google will actually rank content. Okay, having at least one external link is often required before Google will rank that content. It's worth saying twice. There's also this question of Yoast will ask you to flag content as cornerstone content or not. You can generally ignore this because most content is not cornerstone content. Cornerstone content tends to be in source sites. It's our category landing pages and things like that. So generally, a single article is not cornerstone content. Now, for clients, sometimes we will have articles, blog posts that are cornerstone content. And if you have questions about what is cornerstone content, what isn't, what should be, what shouldn't be, the best way, if in doubt, it's not. But the best way to do that is to just pose the question to me or somebody else, and let's just have a discussion about it and decide it. But in general, cornerstone content is going to be created when we build that client's website and not in the blog posts that we're adding on a daily basis. Okay, follow the guidance of the readability analysis, but don't waste extra time getting past yellow if you're trying more things and it doesn't seem to get to green, move on. The readability analysis is not the primary thing we're trying to satisfy here. The primary thing we're trying to satisfy is the SEO analysis. The goal is a green light. Sometimes you got to settle for yellow. Don't ever settle for red because that article's just never, ever, ever going to rank for anything, and unless it's super perishable, nobody nobody should read this after today, then only in that scenario would you settle for a red. And sometimes we do things in a hurry. We're trying to get it posted and get it up there. And it's perfectly fine to go back later and update the SEO. In fact, it's encouraged. If an article is doing really well, maybe it's performing surprisingly well this week, it would behoove our editorial team, or you as the author of that article, to go back and say, wow, let's spend 5 more minutes on improving the SEO of this article, because it's probably got some long-term evergreen nature to it. And the more effort we put into SEO, the more eyeballs we can get on it. Okay. So this checklist worksheet, if you will, is going to be readily available as with this video as a follow-up. And I see there's some things in the chat, so I'm going to try to answer these quick before we wrap up. Are article meta keywords still a thing? Yes. So yes, you'll notice that in SEO when you're in a post, and yes, it is definitely still a thing. If meta description is missing, it uses the default meta description that is set up in WordPress. And that's horrible. So don't let it ever use that. Consider meta description of all the things that we've just talked about and all the things on this checklist. Consider meta description the most important, because if, for example, you did not have a focus key phrase chosen or specified, the meta description is where Google will go to figure out on its own what this is about. If there's no meta description, will Google use the first paragraph of the article? That is generally where it's going to find stuff, but that it will use the default for the WordPress install. It will not generally go to the first paragraph. There is a setting in WordPress that we can turn it to make it do that. But in general, the default in WordPress is it will use the generic meta description for the whole website. And if the setting is turned on, it'll pull the first so many characters of the post. So Andrea, you're correct there. Is it better to use more than one key phrase? You can, as long as the article has enough copy and you can satisfy the green light for. You'll notice if I go back here, because this one has some related key phrases set here in WordPress, in Yoast. Notice how right here for common SEO mistakes, I've got an orange. So you don't want to put multiple related key phrases in here unless you can get green on them. Now, this article's not done. This is something I'm working on. But the reason it's giving me the orange right now is that this key phrase is not in the introduction. So which means it's not in the first paragraph. So it's in, and I'm relying on it because it's in the H3, but it's not in this copy. So what I would do in this case, and what I will do, is I will figure out how to get that phrase into this body copy right here in this first paragraph. And it's just a matter of kind of finding a way to creatively explain why you're saying that right there. And I won't take the time right now, but that will fix this. And then when this publishes, that related key phrase will be good. And it's always great to use as many related key phrases as you can get away with, but only use them if you can get a green. Any other questions that we haven't touched on yet, or that we can hit here? Feel free always to follow up with me or anyone else individually. And when you encounter a challenging one of these, feel free to just, make that an email out and say, here's the dilemma I had with this article or the question that I'm trying to answer. What do you guys think? And it's also something, SEO is something you can experiment with a little bit. With a lot of almost all websites that we are managing, we have them registered with Google Search Console. And Google Search Console gives us feedback on what it thinks of all of our pages. It gives us ready feedback all the time. And one of the things that Search Console will do is say, hey, you optimize this page around this key phrase, but I don't like that. I don't like this. I don't like how you have it set up. And in some cases, it'll tell you what it doesn't like, or it'll make recommendations. But in most cases, just knowing that Google doesn't like it can lead us down a road of experimentation. And for probably 80% of the articles we're writing, we're not necessarily that worried about long-term SEO, but for all the evergreen content, and you'll notice that Andrea and Michael are going to be guiding our editorial team to develop more and more content that is evergreen, because we're seeing that we can do a lot with this evergreen content and it keeps working for us long after it's been written and published. And it can be republished whenever that circumstance arises again. We have, lots of evergreen content around what to do when snow comes. We have lots of evergreen content about certain events, recurring annual events. We have lots of evergreen content about places and people and events that happen. So just keep in mind that, when you're choosing where to prioritize your content creation, that evergreen is generally going to be more desirable than something super perishable. And that you'd want to put more time into evergreen content than into perishable content. And if things don't live long on the website in terms of their relevance, that is just an indicator to you that this needs to be done with more time efficiency versus something that could potentially get readers forever. Okay, so this is a first effort at 30 minutes to better SEO. We will probably do a more advanced version of this next time we come around to having an opening in the training schedule. So in a few months, we'll be building on this with more advanced concepts. And in the meantime, please send your questions upstream as you're exploring SEO and how to really get the most out of it in everything that you publish. But it is so critical to every article we write in Source, every article we publish for clients, every page that we add to a client's website. And we put a lot of thought in the web development process. We put a lot of thought into SEO for all the pages. And so as you're adding content to the site, this is one area where you have a lot of opportunity to impact how often and how many eyeballs will end up on this content. And after all, that is our business. And there's no point in you going to all the trouble to create this content and then not do the few extra steps on the end that will maximize how many people end up seeing it. We want your content to be seen by as many people as possible. And this is one of the major ways you can impact it. The next time we get together, we're going to talk about how headline and image can impact the number of eyeballs that are seen. And so I really appreciate you watching this video or being here live to discuss it. And please download and use the checklist until it's like rote memory. We'll be sending that probably by email along with a link to the video when we have everything set. Okay, everybody, thanks for your time this morning. I appreciate it. And we'll talk again very soon.